Hey guys, and welcome back to Gregtech New Horizons. So previously we made a start in our new base in the void dimension here. During the livestream last episode we managed to install this new drawer network for bulk storage. So we mostly have all of the dusts and things over this side, and we also have some storage buses on here. We got some ingots on the opposite side, gems, blocks and coins, which means that we now have the majority of all of our items accessible here in our ME terminal. This really is a huge step. It's going to make things a little bit smoother, at least for the crafting. Most of the items here came from our old storage room here. There's still some things that remain, but these things will swap over as we need them. So before we can continue with any more expansion or machine additions, we are going to need two things. Something that's going to produce us some power, and for the time being we're going to be going with this combustion engine which we crafted during the live stream. And we are also going to need something to power it with. We could technically use our cetane, but instead I think we're going to be switching to something called high octane gasoline. This is unsurprisingly a very involved process, and I think I counted out 5 large chemical reactors that we need, and also 2 distillation towers. So yes, we do have some of the things over here in our old base, but I think we're going to leave all of these setups and we'll just build from scratch again. A lot of these processes we have to leave intact in order to build the machines to expand. There is one thing that we can do though to help us along a little bit, and that is make the nano processors. So this is the cheaper version of the HVs, which do require epoxy, but we did get very lucky with quest rewards on the live stream. Check this out. Sonarium batteries, Aquada, ender chests, tons of quantum eyes, ender tanks, the sensor, conveyor modules, pistons, epoxy boards, okay. Wow, that was insane. So yeah, that was that was quite the loot bag opening right there. But this allows us to get our HV circuits, some of which we'll need to make into EV. But at this point we've seen the crafting of the large chemical reactors before. This actually has to be an EV recipe, so we'll have to make an EV energy input for this. There is a couple of other problems, like for example, how are we going to get nitrogen and oxygen in large quantities? There is also a hydrogen requirement here as well for hydrocracked light fuel. So some parts of this I haven't fully figured out, but I think we're just going to start here by making our 5 LCRs and 2 distillation towers. Hopefully we have enough materials to pull this off. We'll see though, I guess. It's still very difficult to tell if we have enough materials for this, but I have been doing many hours of crafting to get these things. We got our oil cracking unit, the distillation tower, and 5 large chemical reactors here. No doubt we're missing some parts for those things, but I have also been very busy here trying to plan out what this is going to look like. Again, this has been through multiple iterations, but basically what we have over here is, well, the green is distillation towers, the grey here is LCRs, and the yellow here is the oil cracking units. And then what I'm thinking is over here we have, well, the pink is going to be power storage. Eventually this will be a multi-block, but for now we're just going to keep using the single block battery buffers. Over here we're going to have the combustion engine, which gets its power from the last LCR on the line there. This is our high octane gasoline line. So we got high octane gasoline, anti-knock agent, nitrous oxide, gasoline and raw gasoline. So somehow we get the fuel from over there into these engines, and we can even stack these vertically. Let's see if I remember how to build this multi-block. It's been, I don't know, like 6 months, 9 months since I built one of these things. And it may actually be different to interactions here in GTNH. We'll see. So we got the 2 gearboxes in the middle. This is going to be raised off the ground one. I think all of the multi-blocks from here are going to be raised 1 block. So energy output has to be on the back. This is our buffered dynamo hatch. So this will output up to 4 amps. And this thing can output 3 amps. Muffler hatch above this. Quest complete for the glass cable. I need to keep buying that as soon as we can. We're going to need so much of this glass cable to connect all of our AE system together. Especially since we're building so far out like this. But yeah, I really want to put it far away because of pollution. So this area over here is going to be very heavily polluted. I don't want that to contaminate over there. And eventually we'll have air filters, but there's way too many things to craft right now. So that's kind of lower down on the priority list. So as it turns out, I was actually completely wrong with this combustion engine. But this should form the multi-block. Yeah, there we go. So we're in a bit of a tricky situation here. We need to give this thing fuel in order to power the machines to make fuel. So I'm not really sure what we should do first. Maybe let's build the rest of these multi-blocks out and then we'll worry about the inputs. Oh, actually, one more thing. Did we make any of these on chunk boundaries? Doesn't look like it. I think we're safe. That would have been a disaster. What about over here? Like, everything is chunk aligned here, but some parts cross over the chunk boundary, so I want to just make sure that we're not on chunk boundaries here. It doesn't look like we are, but this is only a 2-block gap, and this is 3-block gap. We can't have that. Let's move this in a block, actually. Perfect. I can already tell this is going to look pretty crazy when it's finished. I'm excited though. Let's do this. Pipe casings in the middle. I hope we have enough IO space for this, considering we're wall sharing all of these. We may have to separate off this last one, as this is a 4 input. Yeah, we need 4 different fluid ins and 1 fluid out for this one. I think the rest in this chain though are only 2 and 1 output. Let's see if this is going to work. Oh, I don't know if I made enough casings for this, is the problem. It's hard to count it out because, like, it's variable. It's not always the same amount of casings for every multi-block. This one should form. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, I think we can make it work like this. And we're short 1 hatch. I did miscount. Yeah. That's gonna happen more than once today. And we need more casings. So I've also been making up so many of these interfluid conduits, which are going to come in very, very handy. I think we're also going to pair this with fluid P2P, is at least what I'm thinking for our fluid transfer. No more of this situation. We don't want a mess like this. Okay, we got our casings, and we're 1 short. Lovely. This is the trouble with this transitionary period. There's going to be a lot of back and forward. Not really a whole lot we can do about it right now, though. It really all does add up though. We finished the live stream on 420 hours and we're now on 427. So that kind of gives you an idea of how long I've been at this, and we're barely even started this project. Okay, we got 2 more of our multi-blocks built here, but the other spaces is actually things that belong in the other base and will eventually move over. So this one here is going to be the oil distillation, which is this distillation tower right here. That leads into 2 LCRs, which is going to be for our fuel desulfurization, and then hydrogen sulfide into sulfuric acid, which is these 2 LCRs. Hopefully a bit more clean looking than what we have here. And in the middle we're going to have our distillation tower for severely steam cracked heavy fuel, which is this massive thing right here. And this isn't set in stone yet, but I'm thinking that we have polyethylene and PVC over here. So we are going to need a way to figure out how to wire all of this stuff up. Basically, this multi-block here and the distillation tower is running at MV. 4 of these LCRs are HV, and the one on the end here is EV. So we're working with 4 tiers of power, and we definitely don't want a crater. Or a hole? I guess it wouldn't be a crater here. So I saw that in this pack, we actually have something called the high amp transformer. So this high amp transformer is able to accept 4 amps of EV and output 16 amps of HV. So what I'm thinking here is that we have, this is the EV one, right? Yeah, this is our EV energy hatch right here. So basically everything after this block here we want at HV, up until the distillation tower, which is going to be at MV. Yeah, see, already we have this backwards. This is the output right here. So cable loss is also something that we have to keep in mind here. We're going to be going with blue alloy for HV, aluminium for EV, and what is it, annealed copper for MV. And this is actually the last of our aluminium as well, so we're going to have to cook some more. But yeah, we could technically go with the lossless cables, but those are just way, way too expensive at the moment. Even if we look at like the MV recipe, right, this is just for 3 wires. It costs an MV pump, stainless steel fluid pipes, and superconductor base, which in and of itself is not a cheap ingot to make. This is a blast furnace recipe with the dust, and this is a mixer recipe with a bunch of other dusts and fluids. Thankfully though, for something like blue alloy, this is actually a 2 amp cable at the 1x variant. So instead of going for 8x, we can actually go for 4x, and this will give us the 8 amps that we need. Or no, we have to be able to handle 16 amps, right? Yeah, so we do need the 8x version. Okay, I'm going to be here for a while making some cable. And we'll come back to see if we have any explosions on our hands. Alright, so I spent some time hooking things up. It actually doesn't look too bad under here. Although I would quite like to coat some of these wires and color code them. So basically what we have here is our combustion engine output goes into the battery buffer. We have some more Lapatrons being crafted, but these are still very expensive, taking 2 HV circuits each. And they're a very slow recipe. Cable loss is something I was kind of concerned about on this chemical reactor. Since if we look at the recipe for high octane gasoline, it takes 1928 EU per tick. Obviously a full amp of EV is 2048, which is what is going to come out of the battery buffer. But by the time it reaches this machine here, it's only at 1997, so we're like just in range here. We kind of got a bit lucky with the distance. I did not measure this at all before setting this up. So this should work in theory. I don't know about the HV stuff down there or the MV stuff, but now it's all about getting the fluids where we need them to be. This is really the tricky part, and I think we also need some more super tank buffers as well. I would quite like to give pretty much everything a super tank, which is a lot of LV circuits. It's 4 each. Currently we're on 429 hours. I'm going to see where we are at the end of this episode. Yeah, back to the grind though. So it's been a little bit of time later. I've been working on our fuel system over there, but I thought we'd take a small break from that and we move into P2P channels. Let's maybe just craft, I don't know, 8 of these things to begin with. Not too many. So unfortunately we can't set this up exactly the way I'd like it right now because we can't afford ME controllers. These are just chisel blocks here. This one's the real one, this one's the real one, the rest are all fakes. So basically to set up our P2P networks, we want to place one P2P on this controller. We do however have to provide power to this thing, so we can branch off with a quartz fiber. Quartz fiber only allows power to transfer, not channels. So this sends the P2P channel into this controller. Basically, P2P channels allow you to condense 32 channels from the input of the ME controller down into one channel, send that through a wire, and then uncompress it at the other side, so that you'll have access to 32 channels, but you can transport it using only one. We do need a memory card though. How difficult are those things? An EV circuit just for a memory card? Well, I guess it's necessary. So yeah, shift right click to set the input sides. And I've extended out our ME connection all the way over to this new part of the base. For right now, since we won't have many channels, I'm just going to put it right here. Although the output of this will probably be moved further down once we have more channel requirements on this side. So now if we right click to link them, it's missing a channel, it takes a while, there we go, it's linked. Nice. Unfortunately we don't get the colourful channels like we do in 112, but it should be online, right? So another thing that we can do with P2P that we actually haven't done here in the channel before, I would quite like to try it out though, is actually to use a bucket. So we place another P2P on the input of this combustion engine. As you can see by the tooltip, this is ME, so this is for 80 channels. If we right click with this with a bucket, it turns into the fluid one. And the P2Ps allow you to transfer fluids anywhere on the network. The only downside is it takes a channel, but I mean, channels are basically free if you use P2P channels anyway. So there's 3 requirements for this combustion engine. The first is that we need fuel, so that's going to be the gasoline. The second input is going to be lubricant, which we still have to figure out. There's a few ways to get lubricant. And the third one is optional, but we're going to give this oxygen as well. If you give it oxygen, it basically boosts the efficiency and increases the power output. So there's no reason not to do this really, other than the fact that we don't have a way to produce oxygen. So I've borrowed this full super tank that we had in our old base. I don't know exactly where we're going to be producing oxygen, but I think for right now we move it to over here somewhere. Maybe we just put it right here. It's only temporary, this. And we want the other P2P on this side. Click with the bucket to change the fluid. And this is the side that we want the input side on. So we need to create a new channel with the memory card. Oh, and this debuff is so strong. Look at the hunger bar. So there is also the problem of this. How do we get this cable across this one? I mean, we could just do this, right? But we want to avoid spaghetti like this. That's how the base gets like our old one. The solution to all of our problems here is ME conduit, which actually is not too bad a recipe if you have glass cable. It's just an extra silicon plate and polyethylene, which we're actually running out of. We need to be careful with our polyethylene usage, but this does allow us to clean up this little loop here, and we can share the block space with the conduit. Oh, that looks weird. It should still work though, right? So this also has to be hooked up to this LCR here. Is it this one? Yeah, nitrous oxide needs oxygen and hydrogen. So we have to plug it into one of these things. I'm thinking maybe we do something like that. Oh, please don't connect all the way down. Oh, conduits, why you do that? These things connect to everything in 1.7. Okay, here we have no choice though. We have to kind of loop round. I guess we can share with the conduits again. Don't connect. Don't connect. Don't connect. So now if we hook this up as the input side, set the other one on the LCR, first has to be fluid. Device offline. Ah, are we missing channels here? Oh wait, of course we are, yeah, we didn't even hook it up here. We have plenty of Fluix cable though, I've been buying this every half hour. We're at like 500 or so of this cable. We also need a pump for the input side, which is going to go on the bottom side of the tank to export all the fluids. It's going somewhere for sure. These input hatches should be full. Excellent. And also the combustion engine is not full. We're probably missing a cable somewhere. Nope, just have to link the frequencies. Now you're full. Nice. So this way, no matter where we produce oxygen, we can easily pipe it to where it needs to be. The majority of the rest of the fluids though, we're just going to share the same ender fluid conduit, and we'll use the filters on the same channels for these things. Unfortunately, there's no way to pull the filter in from NEI, like you can in JEI, or maybe it's Trousers Edition that does that. But either way, we need cells of things to be able to filter, which is kind of a nightmare. It means that we need to get these processes running first. So instead of relying on the use of high octane gasoline to begin with, we are just going to use our cetane boosted diesel to power this thing in order to fill the batteries on the battery buffer. As you can see though, I did already test this out and we have the redstone in place actually. So to control the combustion engine, we do need the RS latch setup that we have on our boilers and also on the nuclear reactor. This does have a warm-up time, so to say, and it will increase its efficiency the longer it runs. We also need to be able to turn it off when the batteries are full so that we don't waste fuel. But to do this, I wanted to make use of this very specific Thaumcraft item. We did make quite the mess here, but I mean, we are far away from the base. We just have to scan one of these things. That allowed us to get the research that we were missing in order to unlock the recipe in Thaumcraft. Although when I was making it in the Crucible, I did move it slightly closer to the base and accidentally dropped it in almost a full stack of redstone blocks, which really was not ideal. Yeah, oops. After that though, it was just a matter of putting it all together. So the reason I took a quick detour into Thaumcraft is for this item right here, the dense red crystal. I've been looking for something like this ever since we started our boiler setup actually, but basically what this does is it will not allow a signal to pass through unless it's above a certain threshold. So you just have to click with the wand. We want this set on 11 for what we have. So if this piece of redstone is a signal strength of 11, then it will allow it to pass through the dense red crystal and then into the second side of the RS latch. And the first side of the RS latch is connected to a NOT gate, which basically just inverts the signal. This line leading in is from the battery buffer actually. And instead of reading from two sides of the battery buffer like we were in previous setups, we now just have the one setup. We have this on EU stored and inverted. And then once this triggers the RS latch, it goes up to the second redstone line. Oh yeah, by the way, these are just framed red alloy wire. It basically just allows you to run redstone straight up. But this line connects into our combustion engine, which has the machine controller cover, enable with redstone. And what the redstone control here will do is turn the combustion engine on when the Lapotron crystals are empty, and keep it running until it's a signal strength of 11 down there, which I haven't actually fully tested this yet, but it should be to where these things are like 3/4 full, as this does keep producing power even after you turn it off until it ramps down. But yeah, the fact that we have EV power in here means that we should be able to power all of these machines. And in fact, I have went ahead and changed some things up slightly. It has actually been several hours since the last clip, but I've started actually filtering all of these things. We're going to go in depth a little bit later on. But I did also change the way we were doing fluid P2P as well. It's almost the same, except instead of having multiple fluid P2Ps, we just have everything coming out of this one and then connecting straight up to the ender fluid conduit network. As I also added in hydrogen gas here, which we also need for this setup, the oxygen which we had, and also lubricant here, which I deliberately set up in the way so that we would move it soon. This is definitely not going to stay here. This just has to have access to MV power. But yeah, we're basically just sending redstone and creosote oil through a brewery to give us lubricant, and that goes into the input side of the fluid P2Ps. There's absolutely no advantage of doing this, like, what, 6 blocks for a P2P? It's absolutely pointless, I know. But I just wanted to test to make sure it works for future when we move these 3 fluids away from here. So when I was filtering all of these conduits, I did actually manage to clean up this side. I added some tank buffers here, and I actually got some of these processes running. However, there is 2 crucial mistakes that I made here. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit demotivating when I saw this, or realised this, but basically we need acetone, which I confused with acetic acid, and acetic acid we make from fermented biomass, But no, we need acetone, which is a different fluid entirely. So for the time being, we're just added in this distillery with calcium acetate solution, which is a mix between the acetic acid and either quicklime or calcium. So we could either set up this distillery process in the new base for acetone, or the solution I'm leaning towards is actually distilling wood vinegar, which will also give us methanol, which is another fluid I overlooked. So yeah, we'll grab the acetone right now just to get these processes running, which goes in here. And methanol is the other fluid I mixed up, not for the first time either. So I thought this was methane, which we are getting out of this distillation tower. But no, we need methanol, which is different. Anyways, the other parts we need for this line is all things out of this distillation tower here, which is the one for severely steam cracked heavy fuel, which means that it's time to take a gamble. This is going to be a huge risk doing this because if we start moving all of these processes, we're going to be left without a supply of cetane boosted diesel. So we do have quite a big backlog here, and there's not many passive processes that run in this base. So we should, in theory, be safe to do this. What could possibly go wrong? This is going to be flawless, don't worry. Oh, I hope I don't eat those words. Hey, I mean, at least we have a fast wrench for this. And we get to claim a lot of these ender fluid conduits and things back. So this one is going to be the oil distillation, which is the start of the chain for severely steam cracked heavy fuel. We're probably just going to do this one by one so that we don't mess up the input buses. Although it looks like we already made our first mistake, I accounted for MV power here. This is an HV energy input hatch though, so we need to run MV and HV down here. Oh no, actually this is blue alloy. Yeah, we really should color code these things. No, this is already HV here, we just have the transformer. Yeah, just extend up the blue alloy cable, plug it in, no explosions please, and first distillation tower is moved. So the next one we have to move is this LCR for desulfurization, and this one which makes sulfuric acid. Which is a bit unfortunate that they're on opposite towers. Maybe we just take these two because this top one makes diesel for us. Oh no, I don't think I caught that on video, but we just had an explosion here with the boilers. I think I gave water to hot boilers, which is a no-no. So we lost 3 of those things, along with 1 of the reservoirs, which is unfortunate since we craft them 2 at a time. So we're going to be left with an odd one of those things, and a full super tank of steam I think we also lost. It was bound to happen one day, right? Alright, I think we got everything that we need moved over. Everything should be supplied with power. As for these boilers actually, we can use the fluid heater, which we'll probably switch to, it's just because we had this already. Oh, that's right, we're also 1 cable short here. Always 1 short, but I have managed to keep things relatively uniform under here, I would say. So basically all the power is 1 below the flux cables on the middle line of all the paths. And that's basically the way I want to keep it. The fluid conduits are on the left hand side, if you're looking at it this way. Okay, there is the last piece of wire we need. No explosions down that end, that's a good sign. 1 is already too many today. Alright, let's see if we can get this fluid where it needs to be, finally, right? So we are missing a few super tanks. I have already used a stack and a half of LV circuits today, crafting all these super tanks you can see. So there's a few we can pinch from the old base, but we're gonna just live without them today. Anyways, the first step is to give this thing oil, which goes in here. If we turn this on, this should give us our sulfuric fuels. So sulfuric heavy, sulfuric light, sulfuric naphtha, and refinery gas. Yeah, sulfuric gas. So we need 1 cell of each. And each of these have to be filtered in this LCR. And we make sure we set the filter before we change the channel here. Next one is heavy fuel and light fuel. And then we set the export on the tanks here. So from here, each of these have to be desulfurized on circuit 4 with hydrogen gas. This will give us the desulfurized version of the fuel plus hydrogen sulfide. So the hydrogen is going to be sent from underneath, which is connected to our main fluid conduit network. The hydrogen is just in this tank for now. So when I was doing prior testing, I did grab this light fuel super tank that I let build up with all of these machines in our old base. So hopefully the light fuel ends up in this hatch, otherwise we'll have to shuffle some things around here. So obviously we do still have to input oil into this distillation tower. It's almost about time we see about upgrading our oil generation rate. But if about twice a day or so, I'd come over to these oil rigs and move them. As you can see, we've actually cleaned out like 4 chunks around here. I just keep digging around to the next available chunk. We should have a decent amount of oil in here, yeah. The other thing is we need to fuel these off-site combustion engines, but when we have HOG, it will burn for much longer than the cetane. On the inputs here, I think we actually will have a super tank for oil though. 192 buckets, that'll last for a while, I would say. Okay, we must be getting enough fuels by now to run this thing. Oh, it did run. It gave us refinery gas, and the hydrogen sulfide ended up in the wrong one. Yeah, hydrogen sulfide we want to be sent up to this output hatch, so we can actually lock it in the GUI here. Oh, and that was sent somewhere. I don't know where that got sent there. Because it's on green and it's an output hatch, it automatically sends its fluid. Okay, so the hydrogen sulfide we want to turn into sulfuric acid. So we're getting oxygen from underneath, which is from the main ender fluid conduit network. This should run if we turn it on. Maintenance issues, of course. Ah, now it runs. Okay, so this will give us sulfuric acid out of here. Okay, cool. So the light fuel we want to hydrocrack. The hydrogen we send in the underside of this. So light fuel goes in this one, and heavy fuel we want to be sent on the top to severely steam crack on circuit 3. Okay, now you should be able to run. Excellent, that's what we want to see. I was concerned about the amount of power being sent into this thing, but we look to be okay. So this gives us severely steam cracked heavy fuel, which we need to be sent over to this distillation tower. So we can just hook it up to our original ender fluid conduits here. Oh no, and it's gone. Because green was hooked up and it's an output bus again. Oh, where did that go? It's somewhere on here. That's naphtha. I mean, the thing is, most of these things have been changed, but there's a few that it could end up in. Yeah, like, look at this. 2 buckets ended up here. Oh, what a disaster. Okay, we fixed the filters. Is this guy going to turn on now? So after a good, like, 10 minutes or so of troubleshooting this thing, it didn't turn on. I've, like, hit this with a mallet so many times and nothing happened. We gave this power, we gave this inputs, I could not figure it out. And it turns out that we still had the machine controller on the bottom of this thing. And now it works. It's always the tiny things that you miss. Anyways, we should be getting all of these fluids. Look at all these products we're now making. I mean, we were making all these before, but this is where we need them. So these will be extract on brown. We will have to go through to pretty much all of these multi-blocks and add the fluid detection covers to automatically turn these things off. Otherwise, they will happily just keep sipping the inputs and void the outputs if there's no space for them. So that's definitely something we want to pay attention to, especially for these processes here. But anyways, now that we have our outputs for the distillation tower, so to go in depth on these recipes, we need raw gasoline, which is methanol, refinery gas, naphtha, and acetone. The methanol and acetone we take care of next episode, but the refinery gas and naphtha we're getting from this distillation tower, and the refinery gas is over here actually. So refinery gas here can be hooked up to the main ender fluid conduit network, right here, extract on brown, and I think I've already filtered the inserts for this thing. Yes, so this should stay full. We can take the cells back in the super tank. The naphtha here should come from this one, if we plug this in. Actually, we don't want a bend in the wire like this. Let's move it over a block. Wow, look at the size of that tooltip as well. All the fluids on the one network. Okay, so that means you should be running now, right? Excellent. So we're getting raw gasoline. Quite a lot of it as well. I think we get 20 per recipe. We're eventually going to run out of acetone though. So the next one in this chain takes our raw gasoline and toluene. The toluene we send underneath, and this should give us regular gasoline. Oh, it was just that quick, but we are getting our gasoline, okay. Next input for high octane gasoline is just regular octane, which we get out of our brand new distillation tower here today. That comes out right here. And in fact, we actually also get naphtha out of this one. So this octane we want to be sent into this end one here. Filter this one for octane. So the next ingredient is nitrous oxide, which is being made here on the third LCR. That is also being filtered in the end one here for high octane gasoline. Then we need more toluene and anti-knock agent. So the anti-knock agent, which is in this LCR, is butene and ethanol. Yeah, so butene we make over there, but ethanol we're not producing anywhere. So ethanol is something else that we'll save for next episode, but we do have more than we know what to do with at our old base here from fermented biomass. Let's actually just grab the whole super tank. We can add it to our fluid P2P network. Yeah, for now it just gets added to the list of the temporary fluids here. And we filter it in this LCR. This is so much bigger of a project than I initially thought. When I was first glancing through all the recipes, I thought, you know, this is only going to be like one distillation tower. We're already making all this stuff anyway, but nope, moving all this stuff takes many, many hours. And I don't actually know how this is going to turn out, this video. This is probably the most difficult video I've ever had to make on the channel. I don't know, just the whole combination of factors, to be honest. Anyways, what else are we missing out of these things? I think it's just the toluene we're waiting on, to be honest. That seems to be our bottleneck, as we don't have enough to finish this last LCR input. We need a full bucket for this one. I think we also need a circuit and anti-knock agent. Do you work? Oh, it's working! Nice! Okay, but this is a 20-second recipe, even at HV. Once we let enough build up, we should be able to run this thing. How many hours has it been? We're on 438, so that's been what, 18 hours? 18 hours to get this set up, and it's still not done. We still need all the redstone controls. Oh, and another thing I don't think I showed back at the old base, but we used to have this set up here with the auto workbench. Since the distillation tower here for severely steam cracked heavy fuel gives us tiny piles of carbon. So what we do is we take it from the output bus, send it into the auto workbench, which converts it into regular dust, and then it just gets stored in a regular drawer here. So this is the moment of truth. Are we going to be able to produce high octane gasoline? The answer is no. Ah, we need the circuit. Now we're running perfectly. High octane gasoline. Oh, we get so much as well. We get 32 buckets per recipe. Oh, that is awesome. Well, obviously we need to send this over to our combustion engine here. And I did change up the inputs here on the combustion engine. We are just actually taken from the same fluid P2P. So actually we can just hook up the super tank to our main fluid conduit network. And we move the output hatch to the middle, just so it's symmetrical. That way we can add a filter on the insert of the combustion engine. Take out the C10 here, we no longer need this. Now we should see the full input hatch of high octane. Yes, we do. Oh, and it does run, look at that. Oh, we have power. Okay, we turn it off for now though, because we don't want to waste fuel or space in the batteries. We do still need to hook up power to the AE system over here, as we are still actually relying on cetane. Once this super tank runs out of cetane, we're basically locked out of our AE system, which is why I pushed so hard to get the system operational at least. Even though there is still some optimizations that have to be done. But I think we saved those optimizations for next episode. Thank you so much if you made it all the way to the end of this. I really appreciate your guys' support. I'm honestly having a blast with this new base. I'm really excited to see where this is going to go. But yeah, that is going to do us today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon for some more Gregtech New Horizons.